Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is a screencast-o-matic presentation and recording for the part of the lesson that has us looking at China's Great Firewall. Before we get started, please let me encourage you to open up to today's lesson, scroll down the correct section, and get ready to answer the key concept questions as they coincide with the reading. Let's go ahead and get started. The Great Firewall of China. China has been stepping up its internet censorship. The crackdown is part of a wider effort by President Xi Jinping to consolidate power. The signs of a crackdown were unmistakable. Over the summer, two popular Chinese websites hosting foreign TV shows and movies were wiped clean. Soon after that, WhatsApp was partly blocked by Chinese censors, and in November, Skype disappeared from downloaded sites. China, an authoritarian country where information is tightly controlled, has long had an uneasy relationship with the internet. Recognizing its importance for the economy, officials haven't cut off access as some repressive countries have done. Instead, China has allowed its citizens to go online, but with limits on what they can see. However, over the past several months, it is true that the Chinese government has expanded online censorship, perhaps fearing that too much unfiltered information could one day lead to challenges against China's one-party communist system. It does appear the crackdown is becoming more intense, but the internet is also more powerful than it has ever been before, says Emily Parker, an expert on the internet in China. No Facebook, Twitter, or Snapchat. China's become an economic powerhouse, but it still keeps a tight lid on dissent and denies basic freedoms to its 1.3 billion people. Political opponents are routinely in prison, and criticism of the government is, in fact, not tolerated. China controls the internet through a complex system of filters and censors collectively known as the Great Firewall. Of course, it's a play on the Great Wall of China, a series of massive fortifications built thousands of years ago that are still a major tourist attraction. The Great Firewall involves tens of thousands of government workers monitoring social media and blocking some websites altogether, especially ones where Chinese can access material that's critical of their leaders. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Google, Snapchat, and many other foreign news sites, including the New York Times, are blocked in China. What's behind the latest crackdown, though? China experts say it's part of a wider effort by President Xi Jinping to consolidate his power in a way that no Chinese leader has in decades. Since becoming president in 2012, Xi has tightened his grip on China's massive military and taken more aggressive stand with smaller nations in the region. He's also used an anti-corruption campaign to purge Chinese officials he considers disloyal. And Xi's government is mandating that loyalty to the Communist Party be a larger part of the curriculum in China's 283,000 schools. All this is prompting comparisons between Xi and China's revolutionary leader Mao Zedong, who once exerted virtually unchecked authority over the entire nation. But Mao ruled China in an era when it was easier to keep information on a lid, and that is, of course, still possible when the internet provides instant access to the world, ? Millions of Chinese people have used special software to construct what are known as VPNs, which is virtual private networks, that enable them to access blocked material. There are definitely ways to jump over the firewall, says Parker. If you really want to get onto Facebook, for example, you can find a way. What seems to be different about the current crackdown is that authorities are targeting VPNs and other tools used to get around the Great Firewall. Several popular Chinese VPNs have been shut down, and at the request of the Chinese government, Apple and Amazon have stopped offering their Chinese customers access to VPN software. Both companies have faced sharp criticism for yielding to Chinese censorship. The companies say it's better to continue to do business in China, even Chinese don't have full access to their products. In a case that sent a warning to a Chinese who tried to defy the censors, a 26-year-old man from Guangdong province was sentenced to 9 months in jail last March for selling VPN software. What they're worried about is people using the internet to organize, Parker says. They're worried about hundreds and thousands of people saying we're upset about environmental damage or whatever, and let's, get together and protest. Perhaps that's why officials seem to be so sensitive to any online criticism of President Xi, no matter how subtle. The government even cracked down recently on social media references to Winnie the Pooh after some commentators said Xi resembled the children's book character. Now mentions the images of Pooh are all blocked in China. Tech versus tyranny. Politically repressive regimes have always been wary of new technologies that gave people ways to push back against tyranny. In the 18th century, the printing press was a key factor in the American Revolution because it enabled the widespread distribution of political pamphlets that stirred up against unrest against England's King George III. In fact, some scholars have said that the printing press was critical in creating a sense of national conscientiousness among the colonists. During the Cold War, communist governments in places like the Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, and China feared that news from the outside world would spread notions of freedom, and they kept their citizens in the dark by censoring state-run newspapers and TV stations. But the newest technologies spread information at light speed, making them even more potent threats to the status quo. During the 2011 Arab Spring uprisings in the Middle East, protesters used social media to organize mass demonstrations and draw the world's attention. as longtime despots were swept from power. Later that year, officials in Egypt shut down the entire country's internet for 5 days to thwart protesters. China can't simply block access to the web without causing major damage to its economy, which was transformed when the country embraced free enterprise 4 decades ago. Those economic reforms have fueled explosive growth, and China now has the second largest economy in the world. After that, the United States, of course. China's factories export products like electronics and clothing worldwide, and its companies rely on the web to stay connected. But Chinese officials have found other ways to keep out unwanted viewpoints. China's forced several video streaming sites popular with young people to remove most of their American, British, Japanese, South Korean TV shows and movies. The government also shut down some celebrity gossip websites, and it's part of a push to make online content adhere to government's core socialist values. A game of cat and mouse. In a game of cat and mouse, some Chinese have still found ways to around censorship, only to have the government respond with new screening technologies. Traditionally, China's army of censors have used word screening software to identify objectionable content on social media. So, some people began posting photos or videos rather than text as a way around that. In response, cyber police seem to have developed the ability to delete photos from social media chats in real time as they're being transmitted. This suggests that the government has developed software to do this screening, rather than relying on human censors, according to Citizen Lab, a human rights research group that tracks internet censorship, and that is some people concerned. If you hire 1 million network police, it still wouldn't be enough to filter 1.4 billion people's messages, Bao Pu, Hong Kong-based publisher, told the Wall Street Journal. But if you have a machine doing it, it can instantly block everything. With China's population becoming increasingly internet savvy, some wonder whether China's attempt to control the web can ultimately succeed. That's the million-dollar question, says Parker, the internet expert. I think China is cracking down the internet because they understand how powerful and how potentially threatening the internet is. So as you guys can see, the internet is a controversial issue in China and in other communist countries and socialist countries throughout the world. However, only time can tell how the world deals with the delicate balance of freedom and access to information and the changing technologies that surround us. Thank you very much for tuning in, and good luck with completing the rest of the lesson.